G'day punters, welcome back to the Punters Academy. After a 1 week break, John Walter, good to have you back.
Cheers, mate. Golfed out,
Indeed, and birthday partied out too.
5-year-old's birthday parties, who thought they'd be so stressful? It goes for 2 days. We've got part 2 this afternoon, but yesterday went for about 7 hours or whatever. I'm cooked, but anyway, we'll get through it.
We only ever got the little hot dogs and
he got
party
more
pies
presents and things yesterday than I got in my entire life, I think. And he's still. I'm getting videos now, still opening them. It's a nightmare. I don't know where we're going to put them, but
wow,
what can you do? And he got a shout out on Sky Channel. I never got one of them either. It was unbelievable. Chantel Buckley telling us she owned. We had a horse in the last at Dubbo, got beat a nostril, and she was very nice to give him a mention. It was good with the Batman colours.
Indeed.
Anyway.
Okay, so John, you want to talk about a couple of races from last week's Randwick meeting first?
Yeah, just quickly, because we missed last week. We sort of got a few feeder races into races this week. So, the first race was the 3-year-old was only like a handicap.
Yardash,
the Yardash race. That was a 72 3-year-old, which is abnormal race because it was more like a group race that was reduced to a. Yeah, sorry, mate. That's just to see who it is. So the Yardash and Funstar were probably the main two. Pandemic jumped in trip that day, and it was a slow tempo and Yardash
Was it a
control.
bit disappointing? I mean, a lot of people were sort of against it, weren't they?
Well, they were, considering how impressive it was to start before. It was surprising to see how soft he was, but considering he was jumping in trip and Nash looked like he was going to control Yardash, it sort of all made sense more after the race than not. Considering Yardash was coming from a Wednesday maiden and the others were coming out of a little bit classier races. But that race, I think, will be a really solid feeder race into a number of races coming up. Maybe not at the top level, but I wouldn't be surprised if sort of Yardash, Funstar, even Pandemic, if he finds a right race, will jump in class. But Emeralds was really good from back in the ruck, and even there was a horse of Alan Denham's in there first up, Macambo, that pretty much just had a look around because of the way the race was run, but he'll measure up to a nice sort of mile plus race going forward. So
Matty Rocks, did we sack Matty Rocks?
Matty Rocks was great, but it's still a maiden, I think. Was it one a maiden? I'm not sure. Either way, it's probably eligible for much easier, and I would say, considering they were a little bit dominant over it late, he might try and pick off an easier race than the others might go for. But it's certainly a race that looks to feed much higher class from that. The other couple, that wasn't too exciting. Baller races come out of that. There's nothing much there. Murillo, when he gets up to 1400, nothing much there. Libertini, so they again controlled, Valami had much better control of the speed this time and
looked a bit worrisome for the...
I started cheering. Timmy was on Villamai, and I think the start before I thought it was...
Well, we talked
nearly,
about that also.
That it was nearly... Well, you couldn't say that it was the run of the race, the previous, but it was definitely the run of the beaten brigade. Just sort of did a lot of work and fought, and then the others grabbed it on the line, so it wasn't any surprise for me to see it run a clear second. I wouldn't be knocking Libertini at all there. I think the conditions were much more suitable for it first up to second up, and it did a good job to win.
So the track on that day, though, I mean, it was wind affected.
It was,
and all of the races sort of went out fairly slow.
They did, which was kind of weird because it was set up as a leaders track, but then they said the wind seems to override the conditions, which of the setup of the track.
The jockeys are going out there going, okay, we need to take this into account, so they're slowing down mentally.
Yeah, correct. You get sort of Tim just wandered to the front there. That's the only thing that's a bit weird with these 3-year-olds. They're all really impressive, but there's no real leader in any of the races. Like you saw the bivouac race, which I'm sure we'll cover.
Yep.
No leader. There was no way that Godolphin were keen to send Bivouac out forward after it had sort of over-raced on the speed last time. They would have been desperate for cover. But there's no leader in any of these races. And even going towards the Golden Rose, that's probably where a horse like Yardash might be an interesting runner, because I'm sure if it gets in the race, they'll have a shot at it. Because there's no pace in any of these races. So
Redzall bounces back and...
Yeah, Redzall surprised me. I didn't think it could possibly lead the race. I thought sort of...
Nature Strip, I mean, they've ruined the horse, haven't they? I mean, you can't restrain this horse. It's a one-trick party.
I think everyone's battered him to death with it now, and they're going to have to try and find a race where they can let him rip, because I think that was their final shot at the title. If they couldn't restrain him over 1,000, not that they went breakneck there, but... if they couldn't control him over 1,000, it's time to sort of let him run, I think, because it's just they're wasting too many opportunities by trying to teach him to settle, and he's just a headstrong bugger by the look of it. I thought Zoo Style would lead with sort of Sunlight outside it and Redzall would be in behind, and they'd control it and walk, and wasn't Peter Rada's like
massive run, massive. How
like
good a run was
rocket.
that? Yes,
It was the run of the day,
for
mine,
sure.
and hopefully he gives it a run or a trial before the Everest. I'm sure he does.
It'd be nice,
because I wouldn't like to see him go straight in off that, but I think he's definitely a major player in the Everest off that. There's no doubt.
And is Samad out like another one of those late maturing weight for age horses, or is it just
I think it's Johnny on the spot. I think it's
conditions?
Johnny on the spot. It's there's no real weight for it. Like even seeing Melbourne the other day, like another 100-to-1 winner. No knock on Mystic Journey, but like Gadding, like Tim was offered the ride.
What was that horse in Melbourne? That weight for age horse that improved dramatically and produced some really big numbers. Was it Magic Circle of recent times, or was that the name of it?
One of Mark Cavanagh's?
Where it's actually we're only talking the last couple of years.
Yeah,
where it's actually just come good. And
I know what you mean. Well, the funny thing about this horse, like I know this race didn't rate through the roof like the previous win, but he controlled the tempo much more in this than he did in the previous when he sort of rolled and kicked off at last start. Yeah. So the time was there, whereas here he's controlled it and kicked off it. But he was home 1,000 out. Like, how can you knock the win? I know he had a lot in his favour, but going into the Chipping Norton, it's obviously going to be or the Colgate, whatever they call it this week, the Optic White. It's it's probably going to go around $8 or $10 again. So how are you going to knock it? It just keeps going around. So Avilius was good. He was in the wrong spot and he chased, but the rest of them...
Big money for Dreamforce, winning the tramway.
Huge money for Dreamforce. I think that was basically pattern related.
And maybe also as against the move for Tiaka Shark, the fact that it was easy.
Where it was going to be too, it was not ideal. He actually probably, he was in a bit of a battering competition there for a while with, I think, McAvoy sort of down the back straight, but there was sort of Penske and Dreamforce were the only two leaders there, and when Nash sort of was ballsy enough to drop the hammer early, he just dominated the race, and that horse had been scratched from a few races waiting for a target, and they found the right one and executed it perfectly. So he's a horse that could bob up in an Epsom, there's no doubt, Dreamforce, but I think that's his level.
Right. Any other races that you want to?
No, that horse in the last round, Scarlet Dream. It's a funny horse that could end up in a nice race down in Melbourne over a lot further. There wasn't much more to talk about out of those races, I wouldn't think. Any other horses of interest? Nothing there. Youngstar. See, all these horses behind Samad Out were basically I'd be treating it as a barrier trial. If I was looking at it, a lot of them ran really well. You sort of go through, there was no knock on Girl Tuesday, Angel of Truth sort of sat up on speed but obviously wasn't ready. Youngstar, Natoya went enormous up the inside. Brigham Rocks was great. Unforgotten was a bit funny. He was probably the one that was a bit funny, but the stayers all resuming there went fine. The sprint race, Sunlight, was probably the disappointing runner of that race, but there's no way it was ready to go there. Let It Pour probably were fine behind Libertini. There was no real standouts of horses you really want to jump all over wherever they go, but there was plenty of pass marks. So I'd be looking at a lot of those races and treating them as barrier trials for better races.
So let's talk about Rosehill Saturday. So the track was an official 4. On our figures, it's come up 2.8. Definitely, I thought it was Rails and Run was a decent advantage, and
it certainly.
And even you wanted to be up there, I think.
Yeah, I think you did, and you didn't want to be coming. You definitely didn't want to be coming wide and making your own, which is it was a pretty normal. I think everyone sort of got a bit upset about a bit of a greyhound track. I didn't think it was that bad, and it was just it was a Rosehill 6 metre firm track.
I was pretty happy.
Well, but if you were setting up for the meeting, everyone was blowing up to me about Trope. I'm like, well, what did you expect? I don't understand. What was it going to do? The favourite's drawn 1, each drawn wide to go back, and going to have to circle them, which is never good there unless it's wet. It wasn't wet. What did you expect? So I didn't really see a severe bias compared to what I would have expected on that sort of setup from a Rosehill 6 metre R. So, if you're good enough, you can make a bit of ground on the inside. But that was definitely the place to be.
So the highway was the first. Overall time was very poor, and they've come home slow section. 5 horses within 0.84 of a length, and SPs of 31, 11, 81, 19 and 7. So pox race.
Completely poxed. The winner even come out like it's one of my bloody horses. I nearly died when I saw it was 50-1 and lobbed there, mainly from, never would have found it, to be honest.
I didn't
but it was just one of those ones you're attached to where it's been butchered a number of times over the years, and it was But the trainer was interviewed after the race and said, he was soft. He was basically here for a run, getting him ready for a Port Macquarie Cup or something like that. So that shows how poor the race was. It showed, I think Tim rode a horse in the race that had every possible Chapeau's beaten 3/4 or a length or whatever it was. And it's just if they come out and win a race next start too good. Gem Dealer started short. It was in an impossible spot. It's probably jury's out, but it's such a bad race. It's hard to want to find him. But I thought it had ability.
About 11 lengths below par overall.
Doesn't get much worse than that, does it? Really?
No, it's pretty ordinary.
Yeah.
So race 2, Shock Alert was probably the best horse in a bad race, and
it was a funny ride on the second horse.
Humboldt Current,
I don't know why they got
McDonald doing.
Yeah, they sort of got in a fight to get to a position that was a disadvantage to him. I thought he could have sat, sort of length further back and saved, and probably would have won the race. Instead, he sort of battled with that horse to get to a bad position, then took the leader on early and played into Shock Alert's hands, really. He's just a fighter. That's what he is, a dog fighter. He had Nash on him. He loves a dog fight as well, and got the bob. I think if with a little bit better ride, the second horse would have won. But so
overall time was just sort of about.
Yeah, it was just an average ride. I think that was probably his
fast pace, slow last section. And look, I noticed in the race, from about the 800, there were essentially 2 divisions of horses.
Yes.
And you had that Shock Alert and Humboldt Current up in the first division.
Yeah.
And Lady Cuvée, which was Rails and Run, also was sort of heading the second division.
And it was second up. It was a funny race where it looked like that those two sort of stood out on setup alone, and then Perfect Rhyme sort of cooked itself up in front. The top one was a bit of a query, that Lovacility, it might, but it's sort of a horse that only has a run every 30 to 40 days. It's always hard to line those sort of middle distance horses up that race a bit fresh. So. And it didn't appreciate the fast tempo, I don't think. So, the first 2 just fit race horses. Yeah. They were the last 2 standing. I think they'd have to find a very similar race to be wanting to back either of them with any confidence whatsoever next start. I think that's them.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, from my point of view, I was happy with Shock Alert. It was a good result. And in the next, Irukandji
got a race I was allowed to bet in today. That was great. Yeah, I had something on it.
Look, I backed Irukandji and Mapmaker was out of play when Hieronymus opted to sort of think about it a little bit when he came out of the gate.
Yeah, it was a pretty tactical race. Amazing the time.
Look, very fast pace set by Dissolute there. Yeah. All the 3 place getters were Rails and Run. They've gone along about nearly 9 lengths fast.
Yeah.
Come home about 3 and a bit slow. So overall, they've run fast time.
It was really disappointing last start, Irukandji, from a similar position, and even though it was going to find that right position today, it was hard to sort of like it. I didn't
that was the second start on Saturday for Baker, wasn't it?
At least second. At least second. I know Tim, because Tim rode it last start and it sort of box seated and didn't really. It? No, I don't know what it. Whether I thought it was whether it didn't like being in that spot or what it was, and that was kind of what it would have turned me off it a bit. But it was obviously the place to be on Saturday, and he was a different horse. And again, big margins, weren't there? I think.
Yeah, that's
big
right. So, there's not much probably more to say about that.
No, I think it was a nothing race. Even though that's one I'd be a little bit sceptical about following those horses with great confidence, even though they've run fast time overall. It's just a bit of a funky race. Who was the horse that chased it? Do you remember? Chased Irukandji.
Was it Juventus, was it? Or was it?
I think it was Juventus, and he's a horse that I couldn't find in any race anywhere. It was just a funky race, and the time may throw it out, the form, but going forward, these horses might be a little bit shorter next time out than what they probably could be, especially horses back behind second. If they sort of see them as coming out of a fast run race, I think there's a bit of a limited crew behind the first 2.
Probably right.
Yeah, okay.
So Davier was the short price favourite of the Waller camp in the mile and a half race.
Yep.
And the less fancied stablemate got away with it.
And it was, Waller to me is probably the king of, the stable. I'm not talking about Chris Waller himself. The stable of following spirited marking betting moves. Probably them and Snowden are the 2 where they just sort of bet, and the whole way they're solid through. They're usually pretty spot on, and I think this horse raced probably a bit closer than anyone expected.
Yeah, well, it raced close in Melbourne too, and the only thing is that Melbourne race is that it was trucking the whole way, but from memory, the time wasn't that flash. Look, I marked it as short as I could and came out about market, but it was never a horse I wanted to back. No,
it was a funny role. The Castell's coming out of Wednesday grade, and I think everyone kind of came in it by default, and then Gatry had pretty solid form and got out to crazy odds. So, yeah, that normally for me, if in isolation, if you watch the betting before the race, you'd expect the more fancy stablemate to beat at home just by betting alone, and they've got it wrong. But he's been going okay, and he can run well in a similar race. Right, the winner.
So the first 3-year-old race of the day, to Dulcify, Just Thinking got the job done. Timmy controlled it well in front. I thought, and first 2 were rails and run, and look, really improved since they've gelded this horse, and it's Warwick Farm win.
Yeah.
And look, it was a hard race to look. I ended up, I originally marked Just Thinking at 16-1, and I ended up saving on it because I rearranged the market with Castelvecchio because I knew, I thought, well, how do I price this horse? It's got a pretty awful setup, and Castelvecchio probably wasn't right, so I ended up putting Castelvecchio to market. I backed True Detective and had something on Just Thinking.
Yeah. There's a question about this race later too, and I'll go into more detail about what I sort of thought of, because I marked it sort of 5-2 favourite.
Which one?
The winner.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Mainly because, like I said, I'll go into it more detail. It's just, I think it's a horse on the up. It's a horse that I sort of like in these races. I thought his last little bit in the maiden, even though it was a maiden, was strong. Like, he's sort of a builder. He's not a flashy horse. He's the sort of horse you want to find, and he was going to dictate, rail out, nothing chasing him. The more fancy runners out the back. I thought True Detective couldn't run 1500 down a well. And that was kind of, to me, it was more putting it together by circumstances of the race. But I'll
we'll go into that.
But yeah, I think the 2 horses that are worth talking about out of that race are definitely Castelvecchio and Shadow Hero.
Well, Castelvecchio ran what have I got here? Ran the best last 200 of the day, and there's a big difference between best and fastest.
Yes,
but the best last 200 of the day. Took about 4 and a quarter lengths.
So you're talking best when you say that. You're saying
we'll maybe come into
that later.
Questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Took 4 and a quarter lengths or thereabouts off Just Thinking in the last 200.
Yeah.
So definitely a horse to follow.
And the other one, I don't think there was a split hair in them as opposed to sectionals. Shadow Hero
had a start on Castelvecchio in the straight, but still nice run.
Yeah, but he sort of got held up. It was kind of weird. Castelvecchio hit a flat spot. Shadow Hero sort of had to check a bit, and then it was hard to tell. It was an optical illusion, I think, that I know someone's already told me that if you watch the robot of the race, the old Racing New South Wales trackside robot replay, where they show the horses going around the track or whatever, they got the GPS on them.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
If you watch that, apparently
that Punters Intel.
Yes, Castell never got past it, whereas it looks like he kind of did. What I sort of watched is, I know Castell was kind of getting ready for a 1200, right?
But those chips aren't in them.
I don't know what's going on. I don't care about the robots. I'm just told the Castell thing. So to me, Castell, every start has gone through the line like a jet, built through the line. And if he's one in front or one behind, he's in front after the line. If you watch Shadow Hero this time, he's going away from Castelvecchio after the line.
But I mean, the time was poor compared to...
I'm not worried about that.
I know what you're trying to say. But
I'm just saying that Castell was ready for a 1200, so he's done a really good job, and he's probably gutted on the line. I think the 1400 next start's going to suit him if he goes to the Golden Rose, and if the other one goes to the 1800, I think it's got a much better grounding to improve. So they're both on. I think if they go to that way.
What do you think? Just think it might be a spring champion stakes sort of thing.
Yeah, he's going to be a nightmare to beat in all those races because he's going to keep doing the same thing. He's just going to be up there and build. And if you watch it again, it looked like Sabadar was going to beat him. I know the horse he crowded him up for a bit of room, and it was a bit weird that McAvoy didn't come around his heels when he had a sort of chance. But sort of Tim gave him the option of the inside, which might have been a little like hard fence, may have been a little bit smelly, and he sort of took it, which is sort of worked out for Tim. But if you watch it in isolation, even though they've taken good ground off him late, he's definitely not weak, like Just Thinking, and he's always going to be up there.
He's not weak. I mean, his last 200 was about half a length or so above.
Yeah, but he's that sort of horse. He's never going to put 6 on a field and sprint away, I don't think, off a slow tempo. He's just going to try and grind them. So 1800 is going to suit him.
Yeah, it was about four lengths the last. So the leader last section was about 4 lengths faster in the Just Thinking race over the Irukandji race, but that was also a factor of the fact
of the pace. Yeah. So I think he's definitely going to be a horse to follow going up in trip. Just Thinking, so Shadow Hero, and I think Castelvecchio's run was Just Thinking 4 now. He's got beaten 2 maidens. Yep. Geld had come back and he's gone bang bang. So I think they're the 2 main ones if you're going forward to a spring champion or gloaming spring champion derby. Shadow Hero, Just Thinking. Castelvecchio, if he goes back to the Golden Rose, I think that run's absolutely ideal to set him up for a hard run 1400, hoping, fingers crossed, that it is a hard run 1400 and not a little sit sprint like the Bivouac race.
Well, the Bivouac race for me, I mean, that was a massive result from the punt, but I mean, this horse.
You're an SP man, are you? You're an SP man.
No, but okay. The way I looked at it was this: I said to myself that Caulfield, wasn't it? First up.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. When it
so we talked about that race,
Yes, previously. Yeah.
And come to Saturday, I thought Exceedance was very good. Turn of foot, we all know it's got a good turn of foot. I had underestimated it going into the
first up
Bivouac race.
Yep.
At Rosehill. I mean, Bivouac was almost knocked over at whatever it was, about the furlong by Exceedance going past it like it was
windburn. Yeah.
And I didn't think that the horses was super comfortable on the heavy. That was just what I.
Well, yeah, it was weird because he had wet form, but
yes, but he just did that day.
But he also was extremely keen in the run. Like he was pulled himself into the deck. Yeah.
So they took the blinkers off, which I thought was a plus.
Yes.
Often I don't like that.
Yes.
But I thought for this horse it was a plus. The drier service and the fact that it had a 4 to 11 SP.
Correct, and it had to get Matt in front. It
had the map.
Well, they were never going to go and try and out sprint Exceedance. It was just not going to happen, and all he wanted was a bunny to chase, and Hightail produced that, so it worked out absolutely ideally. Like he Shanghai-eyed out of the gate. Josh picked up the ride, and he's an ideal rider for those sort of horses. Like he's very rarely aggressive early on them, so they normally settle. And I know what you're saying, 4 to 11 as opposed to... And like if you're
9 to 2
sort of one of my things that I look at, he's, say the second up, say he was a little bit flat off a huge performance first up, Bivouac. Exceedance was coming off the huge performance, and he may have been a little bit flat. So now you've got a horse returning to his true form, and the other horse maybe a little bit flat. So there was plenty of merit to me. Like I'm not a big SP man, but it made a lot of sense this time.
It made a lot of sense, and look, the time was outstanding. I mean, the sections were just terrific.
Well, I think Josh, as he got interviewed straight after the race, and he sort of was a rocket ship. This is I think he sort of said on there that he's never been beaten on a horse that let down like that. You know what I mean? So it was incredible, the feeling he gave him.
Well, it ran some super sectionals, and all credit to the.
And it's not as if they went out slow either.
No, they went out. Well, they went out above average and came home fast.
Yeah.
So sign of a good race.
Sign of a good race. And if they control them again, those horses are going to be nightmares to beat in the Golden Rose. They're going to really want something to go out and bust the field up a little bit to bring your Castelvecchios into the race. But traditionally, that's what happens in a Golden Rose. It'll be interesting.
So what have we got here? Exceedance did well. Look, it ran the fastest last 600 of the day, and the best last 600, second best last 400 and 200.
And it was looked plain, didn't it, to the eye?
Took a fair bit of ground off the winner. Look, I thought Kubrick, which is a horse I had something on in the race as well, I thought it was a pass mark. And
it was, and I think he's just a dead set miler. Whether he's sharp enough for a Golden Rose, which he probably will go to on the way to, say, Caulfield Guineas or something like that, he's a dangerous horse. I thought he trialled like an absolute jet, and he's just a horse that maybe keeps safe until he gets to a mile. But he's even dangerous in a fast run 14. But I think probably Castelvecchio may have his measure in that sort of race.
Yeah.
He'll want the mile to shape up, which he can definitely do.
Okay, we'll talk about the Theo Marks now and the filly Arcadia Queen. Look, it was interesting to see the different opinions in the race.
Yeah, well, far out. Look at the time.
When you see what I marked it 2s on.
Yeah.
And that was being concerned. I originally had it 4s on. I thought I'd better make it 2s on just so I don't. Otherwise,
there was one possible danger.
My Kelly bet was going to be a bit big.
Yeah, let's not talk about Kelly again. I'll start getting abused again.
But anyway, look, the point is that it was a terrific price, and
it was a terrific price considering its only danger. Well, in my opinion, was Trope, who had going to be last and widest, and it drew one.
Mate, that 1300 metre start there at Rosehill, drawing that inside.
Well, you got no choice. It's going back.
It's a massive advantage.
Yeah.
And look, there was some really good support for it in the ring.
What did it SP roughly?
190.
Yeah, so red odds.
Was it or something? 195 or something?
Yeah,
round about that.
Yeah.
So
comfortable watch.
Yeah, it was a comfortable watch, and look, they rode it well. They took up a more forward position. They used that gate one, which was good.
Which they announced too, which was handy for anyone. Because you didn't want to think, well, it was easy to think that, say, 1300 first up with the intention to go back to a 1200 of an Everest, that they'd probably want to look after it a bit more than than what they did, and at least they put it into the race and announced that they're going to put it into the race, and that might have been the difference. If you were umming and ahhing with taking $1.90, once they said that, it made a big difference.
It all depended on what you assessed her on. I mean, if you...
Well, you didn't want to back behind average horses either, yeah. So once they said they took that out of the equation...
And Trade did really well. I mean,
it's gone like a freaking jet. Like, they've obviously gone out pretty quick, and they're still merit in the last sections.
But very definitely probably the best run of the race.
Yeah. Oh, well, outside. Well, the winner in it, yeah, exactly. If you move the rail to true and draw different barriers, it's all crap anyway, but I'd still want to be the winner, but I wouldn't be marking them 2s on 10 to 1. I'd be sort of, they'd
closer.
They'd be much closer in the market then.
Yeah.
Than they were, but yeah. Yeah, everyone was kind of crying blue murder over Trope, but I don't know what they were hoping for.
Where was it going to go?
And he couldn't have gone any better than he did, so...
No, terrific run.
And I don't know where he's a freaking hard horse to place. I think he's going to be a heartbreaker. I don't know if he runs a mile, so if he's not really a... I heard that he's maybe going to Melbourne this week. There's a forward, the Rupert Clark. He might go down there. He'd be an interesting horse if he draws a gate down there.
Zusane, finished?
I don't know. What did they put, like crossover nose bands or something? There's some gear changes this what I don't.
Baller, heavily overrated.
Well, Baller was just jumping 35 grades. I think the only reason there was money for it was because of the pattern. I thought Deploy ran a good race, but he's hard to place now. Redouble went good first up. Gemsong went well. Back on the inside. It's the sort of horse that could run in a Shannon and then back up in an Epsom and run well.
For sure.
It's definitely a quality race. I think the winner would win the Cox Plate if they set it for the race. It's just a matter of whether you can win an Everest on the way to a Cox Plate, and it'll be a hell of a training performance.
So maybe the Golden Eagle or whatever it is?
Yeah, well, that's probably the race that's at its mercy. 13-12 back up to 15, no problem. But yeah, anything past that's probably a bit of a question mark. But it's Mystic Journey, I guess you've got to say, is dangerous, but I think this horse is a better horse.
Okay. Mizzy and the Scirocco, they went a little bit below average.
Yeah.
They handed the race for sure.
I thought he went too slow on it, to be honest. If anything, Mizzy, I thought that was the only sort of thing. I thought they'd handed it to him, and I thought he could have booted an extra 200 metres earlier. And that was like he got back and regained the lead late, but I think he would have got him off the bridle and won the race convincingly if he had have taken off a little bit earlier after how well he's controlled it for the first half of the race.
Yeah.
Once she found the front, which I thought was a little bit surprising. I didn't think
she'd lead.
No, I thought Fasika would be in front of her in the run, and that's why I couldn't have backed Mizzy to beat Fasika. Once they landed there, obviously a different story. Champagne Cuddles, I thought he rode it as well as she could, sort of popped out off the 3-wide train and put her into the race considering the slow tempo. Did everything he could there. They all had their chance. Obviously, Dyslexic was the unlucky runner, but it's a bit. It's got a bit of trope about it. It's just a punishing horse to follow.
It is. I've had quite.
And it's a nightmare because it does have speed. Obviously, it showed it on Saturday, but even though they've gone really slow, it can take a hold of position and it's got to turn a foot. So it's a horse you'd think would win more races than it lost through its the traits that it's got, but it just finds a way. It just finds a way to get beat.
Noir was good, back wide and. Sort of, what have we got? Second best last 400 and 200 of the day.
Well, there you go. Like, I missed Noir. I haven't had a close enough look, but I think those horses are take turns horses. I think they're very similar in profile and ability level, and they're going to take turns when the things suit each other, luck in running, that sort of thing. Those horses, there's not much between them, and obviously the times are right. They're nice horses, but they're all going to want everything to line up for them to be winning these sort of races over the next few weeks.
Yeah, in the last race, I backed 2 runners here. I backed All Too Royal, which I thought was disappointing.
Didn't the market? No.
And and the one I did have a very good go at odds was It's So Obvious.
So this is the only other race of the day I could tip in, and I tipped All Too Royal and It's So Obvious. There you go.
Well, there you go. We're both bad judges.
Yeah, and I was really surprised with the softness in the market for All Too Royal, considering its first up runner had come out, done something nothing else did on the day. Laburnum had come out and confirmed it. God of Thunder was always going to be in a crate. Well, if you didn't like God of Thunder, if you didn't like All Too Royal, you couldn't like God of Thunder, and it started odds on.
I had God of Thunder at 7-4.
Yeah. So I was pretty close to you. So I think I was 7-2, God of Thunder, and I think I was 375. I think that was the exact price I had All Too Royal. So we were similar, but I just couldn't see how God of Thunder could win the way the race And it's gone enormous.
Yeah.
But All Too Royal's gone like a busted. Like Catch Me's come from behind it, left it.
Well, Catch Me was probably to run at a race. I mean, it missed
That's
the
right.
kick. It over-raced in the run.
Yeah,
and
done plenty wrong. So it just made no sense that All Too Royal went as bad as it did. I'm not saying it was a good thing beaten or like when it should, but it was just weird that it was strange. It was strange, and it's so obvious had its chance.
And Spanish Dream just got the conditions to suit.
It was the one after the race where you went, well, why didn't I? Like it was 30s. It was the leader, and it drew a wide gate. It was perfect.
I was hard on it, marking it 15.
Oh, it was the same thing. I marked it $16 and haven't back. It was exactly the same thing. So after the race, you kicked back and you just wanted to put, it was the headbutt the table job because it was just too big a price to let it go around being only leader. It's one by act of God, I'd say. I think conditions have got it home, but at 30s, it's very easy to have something on it.
So a quick look at Melbourne. That's the Rosehill wrap up. What do we say, John?
Nothing to follow out of that race I'm talking about either. God of Thunder's a very talented horse, but it's a complete bloody lunatic from it just takes control of the rider or whatever. It's a very hard horse to have confidence in, and it's never going to be a horse you're going to get 20 to 1 about. Which is what you'd probably want.
And there's been money for it the last few starts too.
Yeah, they just keep backing it. Anyway, yep.
Okay, so in Melbourne, I suppose we can. What are we going to talk about here? Rocks the Castle had,
Talk about Zutori. It was the only winner I've tipped on the day.
Dowson was
Dowson was very good.
Gatting ran an enormous time.
I'd say that I'd like to
nearly
see
12 lengths above. And for some reason, our computer model...
You found it?
Well, but didn't back it.
Why not? Can't you now? Can't you get on now that it's 150s or whatever it was and you marked it 16? Get on now.
Yeah.
Claim it at least. Claim it. Just say, listen,
we're going to claim that we had it, but
I'm
not going to claim that I backed it.
Why not? Why not? Others would.
To be honest, I actually never bet in Melbourne on Saturday.
Dallas, that Gatting, right? So
not even my horse that ran second in the...
Tim got asked to go and ride Gatting in one of those races in Perth about 6 months ago. And I remember I was in Sydney at the time and it got beaten in midweek at 3's on or 4's on in a lead up to the thing. They sort of aborted that race, gave it a trial and freshened up to running something. It was pretty funny though. Just thinking, well, that's the only memory I've got of this horse.
It was a silly price.
And now it's 150s, but it's not that. It's a bit like Samadou when it won at 50s. You're going, well...
The time is enormous.
Yeah, what?
Enormous.
And Mystic Journey couldn't have lobbed in a better spot.
No.
Pulled out to win. You'd say, she's the benchmark down there at the moment. And this horse has gapped her the last 100.
And the pace shape of the race would suit Mystical Journey.
100%. 100%.
So, look, just on the day...
This horse was the better horse, but what the hell do you do with it going forward? It's a bit like Samadou. It's a Melbourne Samadou. I don't know, because there was no fluke about it on paper. But what the hell? Where's it come from?
Don't know.
No.
Bobby Lewis, the horse I own a hair in, ran second.
I declared the winner. Bless it, Zutori. It was one of my another miler coming back to first up 1200, drew 16. I don't know what the hell. Was yours on the inside? Why did they go to the middle? Because there was 4 to the outside, and I was like, well, the race was over because it was weird.
I thought we were going to. We looked at
what horse was your horse?
Parsifal.
Okay.
So trained by Will Clark.
Yeah.
We were 5 kg out of the handicap before the race. So after the race, it'd be interesting to see what the penalty.
What they hammer with, yeah.
Yeah. We were going to Balaclava during the week, but that was a change.
I think it might have won there.
Yeah, it might have.
I think it might have won.
Yeah, look, it was a great performance.
I would have balaclavaed up.
And exciting for everyone involved. So
I think the winner's a pretty good horse. And I think so. It was a very well placed, even though you've got beat and you might have won at Balaclava. It was a very weak Group 2 on paper, and even they run time, which is interesting. Yeah, so it just didn't look like a Group 2 going through all their form. But I think Dalasand's certainly the horse of interest on the day. I'll probably get lynched if I said my true opinion of what I'd like to do from a rider's perspective, because the girl's got the job done there, but I'd love to see a stronger rider on this horse, especially going to a Caulfield Guineas or something like that.
That's fair enough.
It's probably going to have a run in between, and I'm sure they'll probably be loyal to, is it Raquel Clark, and leave her on. She's done nothing wrong. I'm not saying she's done anything wrong, but it just... She hasn't got that Melbourne experience. Well, and the horse is a bit green, and I'd just love to see a horse that can, a rider that can stand over it a bit in a finish, in a big race. But I'd be crying foul if they took one of my riders off after it had done nothing wrong. So, whatever they decide, absolutely. But it's just it's got untapped ability. It's the horse that beat Scales of Justice last start, and it's definitely, I think since I think it was $14-15 when we talked about it in the park for the Caulfield Guineas. I think it's into favourite for $4 or $5 now. So it's well found now.
Hopefully some
Yeah, safely someone got
watchers
on. It's a race I was allowed to bet into, and it's just crazy. I wish I'd had bet myself. What a weak dog.
Anyway, that's the end of part 1. We'll be back shortly for part 2.
Cheers.